Welcome to the 80s.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Retro Podcast. This is our very, very first episode. And
Yeah, it is.
as you can see, we're still having some technical difficulties with one or two little things, but I'm glad we can make it in a reasonable time. And it's going to be me, HP Zeta, as well as Apollo, my co-host.
Yeah, welcome. And this time it's live. No more cover-up of our mistakes.
Yeah, and so this time we can't use swear words anymore. I mean, that's going to be difficult.
Finally, I've been looking forward to this all month, really.
Yeah, same here. We've been. I had to postpone quite a few times because of life and things getting in the way. We just did a major office move and stuff, so that required me 24/7 for about a month or so. But that's done, and now we can finally get the ball rolling and start talking about retro stuff.
Yeah, and we had to restrain ourselves beforehand to not basically talk about all the things that we might use for the live stream. We a few times caught ourselves like geeking out and talking and said, hey, wait, let's keep a bit for the live stream. Don't talk about everything beforehand.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest problem that I face, definitely, because every single conversation that we had, we kind of always derailed it into things we wanted to talk about on the podcast. So it's been a hard 2 months, not just for you guys listening, but for us as well, trying to get it all set up and trying to get things going. So tonight, what are we going to be talking about? First things first, we're going to be talking about these classic consoles, which is the relaunches that Nintendo has been doing, Sony has been doing, and very soon Sega will be doing.
Awesome.
Afterwards, we're going to talk about legal ROMs, where to get ROMs legally. And we'll end off tonight with a bit of a special segment, which is going to be looking at the retro books, which you've got there, Paulo.
Oh, yes. Since the last our introductory podcast, I had 3 books by Bitmapbooks in the mail. And when I received the first one, I thought, hey, I might as well record an unboxing. So threw a setup together to try my first unboxing, and this turned into 3 unboxings over time. And I have to say, HP did a really good job of cutting them together.
Yeah, and we're going to be sharing the unboxing experience, so to speak. So you'll be able to watch and see exactly what you get when you actually order one of the Bitmapbooks, how the unboxing looks, what you get with, and just the special care they do. But we're getting ahead of ourselves, and I think we just refocus on the mini consoles, which is our first topic. And the reason why I thought this would be a very nice topic to have is we're about a month away from Sega releasing the Sega Megadrive or Genesis Mini. And we've so far had all of the games that they've released, what games they're going to launch on the system, what the system looks like, and all of that. And I thought we can just have a little bit of a retrospective on the mini systems, as well as look at what the potential future is for it and the current failures that we've had with it as well.
Yeah, I mean, so far I have no mini console, but the Mega Drive Mini, I'm getting my paws on that for sure.
Yeah, it's been on my radar to also get one of those. And I actually started with collecting like the minis, because you always had like the Mega Drive Mini that was made by At Games. And I just never even wanted to look at this thing, because it's a SoC, it's a system on a chip, and it's just absolutely terrible. It still ran on normal composite video, and the controllers were terrible, and the thing was terrible. And then Nintendo said that they're going to be releasing this, which is the NES Mini. And this was my first little endeavor into getting one. And when they said they're going to release this, I was extremely skeptical, because quality on these, it's so easy for a company just to go, okay, we're going to do a cash grab. We're going to release something that's worth maybe a third of what the retail value is, and the 2/3 just pure profit. So we're going to release something of composites. We're going to release something of a few built-in games. It's only going to be games that we own licenses for. We're not going to do any effort into a menu or anything like that. And I was so glad that they actually put some effort into this. And it came out fantastic. I really, really love the system, especially for the price. I got one day one. I was one of the few people that pre-ordered and was lucky enough to go and fetch one.
Oh yeah, you were definitely lucky there. I was resistant, and then soon the first batch was all sold out, and scalpers tried to sell it for like 200, 150, way too expensive, because Nintendo announced that it will be like a limited batch. They will not be bringing out more of these after a certain point. So then I lost interest for a while, and they were at a good price range again, at a fair price range, but now the Super Nintendo Mini went up again, so I'm like, okay, I will skip on these, but I'm still debating about a Neo Geo Mini.
Yeah, the Neo Geo, they actually did try to release a mini system for that a few years ago, which was that Neo Geo portable one that you had a docking station that actually...
The Neo Geo X.
Neo Geo X, yeah. That's a perfect example, it's good that you mention it, of what a bad mini system looks like. It had an absolutely poor OS, and then they just used an off-the-shelf emulator, but they didn't optimize it for ARM. So a lot of the games like had drop frames or skips. They had to use frame skip 2 just to get the stuff playable. And the fact that it was portable and all that, you're sort of forgiven for doing something like that, but with the Neo Geo coming up, I'm still skeptical. With that, I'll wait until they actually release the system and then go out and we can get it. And we'll see how that progresses. But for me, I think the biggest draw of these is the fact that you can actually mod them and change the games. Because if you have a look at the game list that you get on these, it's never perfect. There's always going to be one or two games that you played as a kid that you need to like sideload onto the system just to make sure it's on there, which we'll get to a bit later on, the legality of that and how to do that semi-legal if you can, if there is alternatives and things available. But we'll get to that a bit later. Yeah, so I had this within like 2 months. It got hacked. They released the hack for it. Originally when I got this, I said, guys, this is going to take about 4 to 8 weeks to hack. And there you go. It took about 2 months for the full, not the beta version of the hack to come out. And you can actually run quite a few systems on there, which is fantastic. And because this is so small and it fits in so nicely, it's not like the RetroPies, which I own a few of, that you have to get a specific case for the thing, and the case always doesn't look like a real console. The diameters are always like sort of out and things like this. This can actually sit next to your TV. It looks nice, and you can play it, and it looks great.
And it's convenient. I mean, don't the NES Mini and SNES Mini have the same hardware inside?
It's exactly the same hardware. Only thing they changed was the case. And the SNES Mini, like within a week, it was already modded and you can hack it. But what I loved about the SNES Mini is they actually released Star Fox 2, like a near complete build of that, because there was a beta that was like leaked of it, but their one is like near complete and you can play it on the system. And within a month, they managed to get the ROM off of the system. But that's a different story entirely. So that's the only reason why I actually went out and got the SNES Mini, was just to get the Star Fox from system to say that I physically own a copy of it, which is useful. And then after that, I actually bought the C64 Mini. Have you heard of that one?
Oh.
Which is like the tiny Commodore 64, it's shaped like the bread bin, but unfortunately the keys and things on the system didn't work. And this was another problematic system. When it came out, it didn't support playing ROMs or anything like that. To play ROMs, you actually had to put a USB in and then side load it through BASIC and then create a save. Thank you. Create a save slot, and then suddenly you can actually play your games on there. But they did patch it, and the current state of it, I think, is still absolutely fantastic. And I think that just shows you that if a company really is behind one of these, they can release firmware upgrades and patches like the C64 Mini, because they fixed all of the bugs. Like you can now plug in a normal USB and play any game that you ever wanted to. They added better controller support with it. They fixed some power issues relating to system, all with system updates.
And later the year we have the C64 Maxi coming out in original size with working keyboard.
Yeah, and that supposedly has a few more features, like it has a higher wattage power supply and things, so you don't get the same problems with all your controllers not working, and a few other things. I'm really looking forward to that, but we can't really call that a mini system, though. It's a bit big. It's the same size as the C64. even though it's still an emulation system.
Since you mentioned that, even NEC is now about to release a TurboGrafx PC Engine. What was the other name? There were 3 different names for all 3 different regions, but it's a mini system, but the original system was already so small that it has the original size and is a mini system. So
yeah, and I looked at that, the core FX, and what's interesting there is that it's also regional. They kind of locked out a lot of the games according to region. So I'm sort of waiting to see how that PC Engine Mini actually is going to progress and things before I get
definitely
one. But I think it's we should actually spend some time and just talk about the negatives. And I think the biggest negative that I think almost crashed the market for these mini systems at the moment is the Sony PlayStation Classic.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you've heard of the controversy and the things that are surrounding that or anything like it.
Not in depth. I only heard that the emulation was rather terrible, but you know more about this than me.
Okay, so they released the system, and I think it was during E3 or something, the press got hold of it, and they started playing it, and they noticed that the games that's on there, not only was the emulation not 100% on par, but the games itself, they decided to take PAL games. A lot of PAL games like Tekken is the classic example of a PAL game. Put it on the system and then run it at 60 Hz or try and run it at 60 Hz. No.
Oh, Jesus.
You've had some experience with this, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, yes. I blame you. You got me into buying my first retro console, so now I have the same Master System that I owned as a kid, with the games and the BIOS version 1.3, which is a special BIOS because usually the Master Systems had some sort of game included that when you had no cartridge inside, a game would boot up, like Hang On or Alex Kidd in Miracle World. This one didn't. This one had just a screen telling you, well, turn off, plug in a cartridge, enjoy. But if you press both buttons on the gamepad and up, a Easter egg game would slide in from the right. Snail Maze, that was never released. And it was really like the original experience back then, and it was terrible.
Well,
because what you mentioned, we have the PAL region here, and United States and Japan are NTSC. So 50 Hertz versus 60 Hertz. The game were authentically all way too slow.
Yeah, so basically what will happen in 50 Hertz, because we're in like PAL territories, we had 50 Hertz. So the games is about, I think it works out 20% slower.
14%. It's 30 frames versus 25 frames, and it's very noticeable.
Yeah, 14% slower, and it's extremely noticeable. Now you've got a game like Tekken, and you're trying to do button combos, and you're used to like the NTSC version, which is at full speed. Suddenly your timing is completely off, and you can't do combos anymore. So there was quite a few games like that, and the next thing that they decided to do is they decided to use PCSX rearm for the emulation platform, instead of going out and using their own emulator that they've got, that they developed for the PSP and later for the Vita. They use PCSX rearm, which PCSX rearm is great if you optimize it well, if it's a good port, but this wasn't. This was really a shoddy port.
Yeah, a lot of people were looking forward to it because Sony had experience with great emulation with their own emulator on the PlayStation Portable and Vita.
Yeah, because what they did there was, it's a MIP CPU, and the MIP CPU, you just disable, you slow it down, you disable the cores, and you run a hypervisor over it instead of just emulating, and you basically get an exact replica of what the PlayStation 1 was. So you don't emulate as much to it. You still need the hypervisor to like interpolate, but it's not quite emulation. And your PSP game, your PS1 games will play absolutely amazing on a PSP and a PS Vita. That's one of the best systems to play it on. And for some reason, they decided, instead of just going out and just respinning, because they've already got this MIP score that they had in the Vita, and I'm sure they had tons of these spares sitting in a warehouse without systems, because they stopped manufacturing the Vita shortly afterwards. They could have just grabbed these and then stuck those in the system, use the same emulator. They didn't even have to like recode it or port over the emulator. They could have just released this thing, and the games would have been absolutely near perfect. And in fact, Not many people know this, but there is another Sony mini system that people aren't too much aware of. It's this thing here. This is a Sony PlayStation TV. And
that's new to me.
And what this is, it's basically a Vita, PS Vita, without a screen. It's in a tiny, tiny little case. You connect it up and then you connect it to your TV. And they initially released this as their answer to the Amazon Fire Stick and that sort of stuff, because it does Netflix as well. But you can play your games. It takes full-size Vita cards on here. But because it's the same CPU as the PS Vita, you can actually do PlayStation 1 emulation on here, and it is as good as you can get. It's almost the exact same as a real system. But not only that,
awesome.
It's the same system as the Vita, so you use the same technique, and you can play PSP games on here as well. So you've got this huge library of games you can play on these, and you don't have to play the Vita games. And you don't have to get the expensive Vita memory card, because that's one of the reasons the Vita died out.
It's one thing that Sony always did, showing on the market their own proprietary storage, like Memory Stick Pro, Pro Duo, whatever.
Yeah, and it just doesn't make sense. So what you would do with this is, when you mod it, it has 2 USB sticks at the back, and you can basically plug in a normal USB stick in the back and mount it as a storage device. So you don't need that expensive Sony proprietary storage at all with one of these. But later Vitas, you can mod it as well and then do that. And I think that's a good place to interject into our second topic of tonight, is where would you find games to actually play on this legally?
Yep, that's the question that always arises when talking about emulation, and you always only get a list of things that you can't do, but nobody tells you what you can do.
Yeah, and I think that's because you just can't be exactly specific on this. The lawyers don't want to get involved. The game developers, they want to tell you whatever best suits them. And there is no definitive 100% answer of, you can get ROMs from here, but you can't get ROMs from there, etc. There's a few examples, and before we go rushing head first into this topic, I'm going to sit up straight, get my professional face on, and just let you guys know that I'm not a lawyer. Apollo certainly isn't a lawyer, he's a cat. And I wouldn't suggest taking legal advice from either myself or from Apollo, so we're just going to give you what our thoughts and our interpretations is on the subject, and where you can actually go out, get games legally that you can actually play on these systems. And it's a process, and it's also a compromise at the end of the day when you get these games, because a lot of people want to say that I've got my Nintendo NES Mini and I've got all of my Nintendo games on here that the NES ever got released. And that's what people want to do. But I've got some news for everyone. You can't do that. That's not legal. Mm-hmm. There's no legal way to actually get the full ROM set on here unless you own the entire NES ROM set. Okay, so you own every single game on the NES in physical cartridge format. Then there's a way to actually do this. And what you're going to need is you're going to need a Retrode. Have you heard of the Retrode?
Well, it's a USB cartridge reader that you can get adapters to different systems for. And basically, you plug in your cartridge, you plug it into your computer via USB, and it shows up like another storage device. It shows you your save games in a folder. In another folder, you have the ROM image. You drag and drop it. Done. You have dumped your own ROM.
Yeah.
And that is the only thing that is always implied when even lawyers, like GamersGlobal.de has a games lawyer, Henry Kraseman, who talked about this. And he always talked about, well, you can't just download the ROMs because you can assume that Nintendo hasn't released them onto any web page. So when you download them, it's like you have to regard it as an obvious illegal source. That's one of the things to watch out for. Is the source legal or illegal? And in that case, it's usually illegal. So don't do that. But even he doesn't say, well, you can do this, only what you can't do. And it's always implied like, well, if you have the cartridge, if you dump the ROM yourself, then it's not from an illegal source. And as long as you're not circumventing a copy protection, and well, let's assume that the cartridge in itself is not a copy protection. It doesn't have any DRM on it like that, usually. And then you can play the games that you have yourself and yourself dumped. But he also explained, well, if you download a game that you own, like you have it on your shelf, you download the exact same version, it's not legal, but he also wants to see the company that sues you over that.
Yeah, which is basically what most of this is going to boil down to, because technically speaking, if Nintendo woke up on the wrong side of the bed one day and they want to go after, they want to make an example of someone with ROMs, and you've gone and you actually backed up all of your games from originals with a Retrode on your computer, and you use them on stuff, and somewhere down the line someone finds out, and somewhere down the line Nintendo finds out and they want to set the example, can they go after you? Yes, they can drag you to court, and then there's going to be a proceeding, and that's actually going to set a precedent for this kind of thing, because at the moment there's no precedent. We don't know
that's the issue.
What the outcome will ever be if you go to court about this. That's a very grey area. Now, there is a way that you can actually, on a lot of systems, including this Nintendo, you can actually, without copying the game from your cartridge, you can play it, which is going to be my recommendation. On these, you use an OTG cable, you use a Retrode, you plug in your game, and with some special firmware, it'll actually automatically boot from your Retrode, and you can then play it. So by doing that, yeah.
Technically speaking, you're not copying the ROM anywhere. It's still just read from the cartridge.
Precisely.
If you're not going nitpicky like loading into RAM or whatever, but yeah.
Once again, if someone really wants to argue that, they can drag you to court to try to set a precedent. But I think once you set up so many hurdles for them to try and argue against you, there's no way that they're going to be able to argue that that's illegal at that point. Because you can say, I read up on the law, I've tried to follow every single practice currently, there was no precedent set on this. I made sure that everything I did, according to my interpretation, is legal. And no judge in the world will go to you and say, okay, you're 100% wrong, we're going to throw the book at you, you're going to have fines, etc. They're going to say, oh, there's no precedent on this. Okay, both of the sides of the argument couldn't show us any precedent. So we're going to let you off on a warning, and we're setting a precedent right today that this is illegal. You're going to pay a minimum fine or a minimum sentence, but the next person that gets caught doing this pays the maximum or whatever the case may allow for that. So that's generally how that works. So that's the first way that you can actually legally play ROMs on there. And whether that is backing up your game or that is you take it and you actually load it directly. And you can use the same method on a laptop, anything that basically loads ROMs and has a USB port that you can load from.
And it's worth mentioning the Retrode 2 is on the market for 7 years now. And one of their arguments on the webpage, dragonbox.de, where you can buy it, is, well, why would you want to own one of these? Yeah, to play your retro games legally.
Yeah, that's the only reason that company exists.
Yeah, besides, there are also FPGA consoles by Analog where you plug in your own cartridges, and, well, that system has to handle the ROMs from the cartridge also in some way.
Yeah, and not just Analog. What's the other company that does like 4 cartridges in one?
Retron.
The Retron system. Yeah, that actually copies the actual ROM to RAM. So technically speaking, you can then argue that it's made a duplicate of it and try and sue them. But let's face it, if Nintendo or one of those companies, or Sega, I keep on naming Nintendo because they're sort of one that might do this, but let's say Sega, for argument's sake, they want to go ahead and they want to pressure people and they want to take people to court or whatnot. Are they going to go after you, you're a cat, Apollo? They're going to go find you, Apollo, and they're going to sue you? Or are they going to go after the actual people that manufacture the Retrode, manufacture the Retron 5? What makes more sense for them to go after?
Yeah, besides, I get why Nintendo pops in your mind all the time, because Nintendo is a company that also claims that emulators are illegal.
Yeah, and they literally do like nasty stuff, and we can get into that. Like they go on down bars in Japan, which they've got like gaming bars in Japan, which means you go to a bar, whole bunch of consoles set up, and you can play games in a bar. They literally go after these people, but that's another story. That's another topic. So
Yeah.
that's the first way to actually do this sort of legally. The second way is, let's say you've got a compilation and Sega did this. You can go a bit more in depth on that one. Do you want to tackle this one?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I have the compilation. It's called the Sega Megadrive and Genesis Classics. You can still get it on the Humble store. I think it's not listed on the Steam store in itself. And it's a compilation of Sega games with a nice emulator front end that basically recreates a childhood living room, like with a tiny CRT and everything. But the interesting thing is, in the game folder, you also find a folder uncompressed ROMs. And what I read so far suggests that these ROMs are actually not used by the emulator, but there for you to use in third-party emulators. And all you maybe need to do is rename the file extension for your emulator to recognize it, and they work.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, for what other reason should they be in there?
And you paid for this, so legally,
Yes.
There's a precedent there that it's your property at that stage. So you can use your property any way you deem. They can't tell you how you should play their games. So yeah, that's another perfectly legal way to do it. Another example is Tanglewood, which was a homebrew a paid-for homebrew that was released about a year ago, more or less. If you actually buy it on Steam or GOG, GOG is probably better because there's no DRM whatsoever on there. It actually comes with the ROM file, and the author said, well, if you buy the game for either of those, you can play it on the original system, no problem. He doesn't mind. It's perfectly okay with him to do.
The awesome thing about this game is it was created on a original Megadrive / Genesis development unit in 68K assembler.
Yeah, from scratch, and it took him like a year to learn this, and he actually had a broken dev kit that he fixed during the process as well. Fantastic game, so I recommend everyone give that a check out if you've got some time.
It's fun. I have it, and it works perfectly on a Mister, so legit. And
that leads us into the third and the final way that you can actually get games that you can legally play on the system. And this one, I can say full-heartedly, 100% legal. There's nothing for you to worry about, and that is homebrew games. A lot of developers go and they use original development hardware and they create little games and stuff and they release them for free. And you can download these. It's not copywritten. They're released into public domain. And if you actually go look at any of the ROM lists with list of all of the ROMs that you get, there's several. You can go Google. If you see one with a bracket at the end of it that says PD, which is public domain, and a lot of the ROM sites, if you see a game with the bracket at the back, which is PD, public domain, it means that you can play this. It's a homebrew game. There's no limitations whatsoever on that.
Yeah, and there's still new games coming out for the old vintage systems.
Lots. I mean, on the Sega Megadrive, there's 3 games coming out this year. Look, those are actually played for, but once again, it's going to be the same sort of effect as Tanglewood, where developer releases the game on Steam or GOG, and you download it, and then you can use the ROM wherever you want to, because the developer will be okay with that. But yeah, they're constantly being developed, and you get some really spectacular games on there. And it used to be about 8 or 9 years ago, they didn't know the system very well, so the games you got was very basic and it wasn't great. Now they know the systems well, and you're getting things like Tanglewood coming out, and like I said, there's 3 more A+ games coming out this year just for the Mega Drive.
Yeah, and for example, if you want some games for the Commodore 64, for example, Ponsoft, they released earlier versions of their sold paid-for games free for download on their webpage. That's also quite nice.
Oh, yeah, there's been a few manufacturers game developers that just decided, you know what, you guys have been loyal, I'm releasing it free. We've got that in the PC gaming scene as well. Not so much ROMs, but things like Command & Conquer. They first released the first version of Command & Conquer for free, then they released Red Alert for free. And they carried up all the way, I think, up until Red Alert, and all of the expansion packs was included, and all of those just public domain. The developer just said, you guys have supported us so long, and it's now the 25th anniversary or whatever. Here, take the game, go for it.
Mm. There's the same, by the way, for the Neo Geo. There's a 25th anniversary Neo Geo Classics Complete Collection. That's a long title. Also on Humble, where you get a good bunch of the classic games as zip files, like the original ROMs, that you also can play in third-party emulators. But here's one thing. When you want to play emulated Neo Geo games, you need a BIOS.
Yeah.
So you can either use the free-to-download Universe BIOS, which, from what I read, they have kind of a deal with SNK, because apparently the Neo Geo units that are being sent in for repairs come back with the Universe BIOS. So there must be some sort of deal. Anyways, it's free to download. The previous version is always free to download. But if you buy this Classics collection, you also get the original Neo Geo BIOS in a zip.
Yeah, and if you actually do that, you can get it. And also, there are alternative Neo Geo BIOSes available. I would suggest everyone just Google that to do some research. PlayStation has a classic one. Last year, No Cash released a reversed engineered PlayStation BIOS. So PlayStation is one of those systems where you really can't emulate a system without a BIOS. There's a BIOS that you can use for emulation, and it's free. No qualms whatsoever of that. It's reverse engineered from the original, so no legal problems there whatsoever.
Well, I guess we can sum this up, I assume, as it's difficult, and you won't get a definite answer. And what is assumed to be legal is dump your own ROMs. Become a cartridge collector.
Yeah, that's the foolproof way for it, is to get your own cartridges, either dump them or actually just run them from the Retrode. If you're really scared that someone might actually go after you for dumping a 25 or 30-year-old game onto your computer that you own, which, let's be fair, no developer or manufacturer wants to even take you to court for that, because if they lose the case, remember, a precedent can be set either way. You're allowed to do it or you're not allowed to do it. Let's say they lose that case against you. That would mean they set a precedent that it's perfectly legal for you to take games and to dump it if you own the original. So no developer or manufacturer wants to take you to court. It's a 50-year-old game. No one's going to do it. Once again, I just want to reiterate, I'm not a lawyer, and don't take this as legal advice, but I don't think you've got anything to worry about. If you've got the original, it's yours, you own it, and you make a backup of the ROM. In fact, in South Africa, and I can say this for South Africa, there's what's known as media preservation laws. This came in about the late 80s, early 90s. And basically what it meant was we used to have everything on floppy disks, and your floppy would eventually go corrupt. Same as EEPROMs and all of that stuff breaks down. So there are laws that allow you to take something, make one working backup of it for yourself, just to make sure that your software is preserved. So it depends on your country as well. Go read up, go find out, but no one is going to look you in the face and say, this is the exact way to do it. This is exactly how it can always be legal, etc. There's just too much to it. Unless you want to play homebrew games. That's the 100% legal way.
Yeah, and, well, I guess we just want to play fair and stick to the law, and it's very frustrating when nobody gives you a definite answer.
Yeah. So what we're going to do now, I think this section is more or less done. We're going to carry on now with the next little section. And the next thing, I think we're going to quickly go over to that media file. Apollo, are you ready?
I am, definitely. So are we going to show our viewers a few nice books now?
Yeah, I hope so. If this works, we'll see in a second or two if it works. So I'm going to be playing the media file, and you're going to be playing it at the same time, so that you can see what's going on without a delay.
Yes.
So we're going to do that now.
Yeah, you see, as our viewers probably already noticed, I'm a big fan of collecting retro-themed books, and one of my favorite publishers is Bitmapbooks, because I have a few things to take into consideration for what books to buy. Besides, you cannot just read an infinite amount of books per day or per week. So what I want is a digital version of the book. And I also want it to be available as a nice printed hardcover version, but digital comes first for me. Usually, if there's no digital version, I'm not bothering importing it. So, and with Bitmapbooks, you always get with the hardcover, you get a free PDF. And Bitmapbooks prides themselves in quality. Not only content quality, but also how they package and ship their books, which you can see they are very well packaged. Like they come in a box, which is wrapped up in a waterproof bag. And fun fact, Bitmapbooks is UK-based, a UK-based publisher. And they had a United States warehouse, but there was some issues with the US warehouse keeping up to their quality standards when shipping the books. So in the end, they closed them down, sadly. But they put convenience over, they put quality over convenience, which I pretty much appreciate here. So what we have here are 3 different books. Like they have a series called the Visual Compendium series, which is, as the name suggests, a bit more visual focused with interviews and showing in big print the pixel art of different games. Then we have the extended edition of the Arcade book, which shows you a great collection of original arcade decals and artwork.
And that's the one that you're busy unboxing at the moment, I see. That's the arcade one.
Yes. By the way, this is the first time I did an unboxing, so I thought, you know what, I will wear white gloves. Why not?
It's very professional. Give it the white glove treatment. I mean, I think these books, from what I've seen, they definitely deserve it.
Yeah, you see that they have a very sturdy foam protectors over the edges so that they really don't get any bends, and it works. Before, they had like plastic covers, like with tiny springs to keep them in place, but they would slide off occasionally. And some people said, hey, look, this can be improved, and they did. Oh, I guess it's a good point to say now, Bitmapbooks had no idea that I was going to unbox them, and these are books that I buy for myself. We are no way affiliated with Bitmapbooks. We are not receiving any monetary benefit from showing or recommending these things. I did the unboxings, and we wanted to show them to you because they're awesome. Yeah, as simple as we enjoy them.
Full disclosure, I did actually approach Bitmapbooks, and we said, okay, we want to film your book. Can I film it? Am I allowed to do that? And the actual CEO of the company, the owner, got back to me within 4 minutes of posting a message to him. And he's like,
Same dire.
He's like, yeah, by all means, post, go ahead. And they actually want to see it. They want to see what we're doing and what we're chatting about. He also recommended that we go through their affiliate program. I didn't register for this because I think that's a bit overkill. But I just want to say, from my experiences dealing with these guys, I've never dealt with an online company before where I message them and I get a response 4 minutes. Well, I emailed them. I got a response email in 4 minutes, flat. I'm just shell-shocked at their professionalism.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I was in contact with Sam Dyer before because of support. One of my shipments took a bit longer to ship out, and when I replied to the ticket, oh, I got a shipment notification now, all good, then he immediately replied back, oh, good, I chased for you. Can we give you a PDF as an apology? I was like, this is really not needed, but, well, I guess they also want to feel good about the service, so I accepted this apology this time, and they are really great in service and quick, so it's definitely worth shopping with them.
And you mentioned PDFs, so are all of these books available on PDF? Can I buy one? Because shipping to South Africa is just too expensive. Can I buy one of these?
Not anymore. They used to be sold separate for £10 in addition to the book price. Now they come bundled with the book, and the book price didn't rise, but you get the PDF for free.
Oh, okay, that's not bad. But I'm sure if you message the owner, maybe they'll consider selling it separately at some stage again.
Mm.
Dealing with him, he sounds like a very flexible person.
Hmm. So you probably already saw on this stream that on the unboxing that there is a third book called the CRPG book. And this is something really special because it's a non-profit charity thing. Felipe Pipi. Yeah. I mean, you have to pay for it, but Felipe Pipi, who initiated this book, I mean, let's go back to his full story. He grew up in Brazil in the 70s while they were still under military dictatorship that banned the import of PCs. So, but he was lucky. His dad managed to smuggle one into the country. But then there was the problem of where do you get the games? And you only could get the games when somebody got the floppies from the US and then copied them. So he didn't have really many people to talk about the games, and the language barrier was there at first. But it seems that this genre, computer role-playing games, really stuck with him. And to cut it short, in 2004, when he finally had internet, he was the first time he could exchange stories and fascination and talk about this genre with other users online. So he found the RPG Codex. And they did the RPG Codex list of the 70 best RPG games. I think that was it. But anyways, he decided, I want to make a book about this, about the genre, preserving it for history. And, well, he thought it would be done in 6 months. It turned into 4 years. And with over 100 volunteers, they created the computer role-playing game book, which I think is just stunning. I mean, it is a really nice layout. They got it released through Bitmapbooks to have it proofread and professionally edited to be able to afford it. But all the earnings of the author go to Ocasio. I hope I'm pronouncing this right. It's a Brazilian NGO that helps teenagers and kids get an education and job, basically. So job education. So it was over 12,000 pounds that they could donate through the sales of this book. So this book is strictly limited. The collector's edition, which I'm unpacking there, I have one of the limited to 1,000 pieces collector's editions.
I don't think we had the collector's edition quite yet. We're still busy with the arcade.
True.
But we will be unboxing that one last.
Yeah, while we are seeing the arcade here, let me mention, I already had the original arcade book, which had the arcade artwork span through pages. So you had the spine of the book interrupting the artwork. So it has nearly the same dimensions. It's a bit shorter than the previous one, but this one has actually much more content. Now it has interviews, more artwork because it's single page layout. And since you get the PDF for free with this book, you can zoom in all you want if you want the artwork in all its high resolution, full glory.
And just looking at this, it actually looks like extremely good print quality. The pixels really stand out, and it looks fantastic. So how is it in person? Is it like, is there any like ink streaking or anything like that you normally see with prints, or is it absolutely perfect?
I haven't noticed anything negative with these books yet, and they always seem to come on really good quality paper. All the books that I have from them, and I have all of them except one, which is the Illustrated War of the Worlds. It's Bitmapbooks' only non-retro computing, retro gaming themed book. So I can say they have a constant quality. And with these visual companion that you see there, they have these slight protective covers. I think since the 3rd volume. So really high quality, hardback bound, full color print, heavy paper. And with this one, you can currently see, this is one of the visual companion books where it focuses on the visual aesthetics of the systems. Like you have Nintendo, Super Nintendo, Master System. I really had to get a Master System book because there are not that many retro-themed books about the Master System. I think only one. Yeah. So you see, for example, hang on, 2 pages about the game, interviews with some developers, and in general, bits of history and design of the system. So it's really nice round package if you want to get into the feel of these old systems.
And I really like the design that they have there for the full console. They even have the outlay for the little diagram that you get on the Master System. A whole page dedicated to that, and it looks fantastic. And it looks like every photo has a little write-up there.
Yeah. People contribute reviews to these games. Like, it's usually guest writers who share their own memories of these games. And the special thing with this book is you see it comes with stereoscopic 3D glasses, because the Sega Master System had a shutter glasses for 3D.
Oh, yeah.
And to show you how some of these games looked, they printed them in stereoscopic view, so you can look at the screenshots in 3D.
That's amazing. And then you can also read, of course, the reviews and the things with that. It's a very personal last book. It's very much a nostalgic-driven history and a compendium, like you described before. And I think we're busy now with the CRPG book. I did notice something interesting. Yes. So the first arcade one came with a little poster. The Sega Master System came with the 3D glasses. And I see the CRPG also comes with some extra stuff. Does all of their books come with extras? Or
not all of them. Usually you have a postcard or something small, but it's not guaranteed. And the CRPG book comes with some extras. I mean, the extras you see there are the collector's edition extras. Like in the envelope, you have a notebook, like a block of square paper to draw your own dungeon maps. And in this cardboard roll, you have the cover artwork as a nice big poster.
Nice.
So, but yeah, I got a bit ahead of myself before. So, because this book is really such an awesome thing. It's work of heart and art, I would say. And you can see that Felipe Pepe really took effort there and did something that he loved and wanted to share with the world. This book comes with a lot of interesting and good hints and tips on how to run these old games, how to approach them, because there is a bit of a culture shock when you play first generation RPGs. You have to read the manual because there's lore in there that you have to know. You have to make your own notes. You
have to draw your own maps, and if it didn't come with a cloth map, then you're going to have to get that pencil out and paper and start drawing maps.
Yeah, and this book features over 400 games with 119 volunteers who review and share their tips on how to get them to run, what mods to use, how to best experience these games in the book. And the professional thing really is every article ends with the initials of the contributor or author of the review or article. And you find a list of all of them in the beginning of the book, including their initials. So
there's 400 CRPGs. So this is basically the ultimate encyclopedia for retro CRPGs, I would say, by the sounds of it, by how you described it.
And you know what the best thing about this is?
Yeah, what is?
I mean, it's a non-profit project. And Felipe, he put this book online for free. You can download a high-quality PDF for free on his WordPress, which is crpg.wordpress.com. In update 26, which is the latest post, if you scroll down a bit to the edit, you find not only a normal PDF download, but a high-resolution download. And he says, share it. It's legal to share. We want to preserve this for the world. This is to share the history of the beloved genre. And hey, this is your chance to take a look at the quality of the books that Bitmapbooks produces for free.
I'm just blown away by the amount of work that must have gone into actually create this. 120 people managing their reviews, just doing the editing. Now, for those of you that's not worked in sort of the media field before, and you had to do illustrations and Illustrator and all of that, just doing a small team of 7 people trying to get information and articles out of people and then editing it into a readable, clear format, it's extremely difficult. And here you had 120 people, 400 games, and I'm just blown away by it, and then he gives it away for free. You can view that as a sample to see if you like the actual books. And how much do these books cost, more or less?
£30.
So £30. That's $600. If you factor in tax and all of that, it's nothing. It's cheaper than most of the other books that you go out. Imagine I bought my Spider-Man anniversary compendium, and that thing cost me $1,200. And these are 600. It's half the price, and you're getting way more out of it. So yeah, the links are in the description down below to actually go to their website. You said they need to look at the blog and the latest post to actually get the PDF copy, right?
Yep, and there are a small correction. It's not crpg.wordpress, it's crpgbook.wordpress.com. And there you have update 26, 3 great news, where Felipe talks about how much they actually raised with the book. Yeah. Like the hardcover book raised £12,475, and all this money is being donated to Vokachao. I hope I'm pronouncing this right. Before it was wrong, definitely. And I'm now reading from his page. The updated and proofread PDF of the book is freely available for download again. It has everything added to the hardcover version, plus hyperlinks and bookmarks, and you can download and share it as much as you want. Grab it here, high resolution download down here.
So it even has like, okay, I'm going to switch this back. So it even has like hyperlinks, so you can read the reviews, and then if there's a link, just click on it. It'll take you to wherever you've read it from.
Yeah, and then the book itself has like a section only on lists, like where to continue reading about the CRPG book genre, where to get help with getting these books to these games to play. So it's really an all-in-one starting point in the genre, with the history, where do computer role-playing games actually come from. And yeah, I mean, you notice I'm totally over this book and the entire project, so I only have to say, Felipe, awesome, admirable, this is great.
Yeah, but by the sounds of things, this is one of the best efforts that I've ever seen someone doing the publishing. I know that you get, I'm not going to name them, but you get some other authors that do reviews of like entire collections of certain systems, and I've seen some of the work, and those don't even incorporate as much effort placed in them than what went on here. So I'm really looking forward to actually downloading a PDF and checking it out and seeing it for myself, because it sounds like it's just like the complete guide, everything you need to do if you want to start with CRPGs, you know. Yeah. The start here manual.
Yeah. And honestly, I mean, it's good that we said before we're not affiliated with this publisher, because if you would just listen to me now, it would probably sound like a sales pitch or something, but it's just that awesome to me.
No, you haven't done the whole like, buy it now, $10.99, and you'll get a free poster included.
Well, I can do that now. You see, there's only a second limited run of the standard printed edition of the CRPG book. And when I'm looking at their webpage now, they still have some in stock. So if somebody wants to get their hands on a printed copy of this, not a collector's edition, the standard edition that doesn't come with the slide cover and the goodies, but it's still an awesome book, of course, and comes with a big PDF file. The PDF you get of Bitmapbooks is actually bigger in size than the one you get as HQ from Felipe's blog, but I didn't notice any quality differences, really. It's just placebo now, I guess.
Yeah. So there you have it, guys. If you want to check that out, links are in the description. Also, the link to the PDF download. If you can just give that one out again, Luna. Apollo. I called you Luna.
That would be crpgbook.wordpress.com.
Perfect. So what I'm going to do is I'm quickly going to take a break here. I'm going to type it into the chat. CRPG. Okay, book.wordpress.com. I just want to double check that this does actually work, because the last thing I want to do is put into chat a link that doesn't work. And by the way, guys, we're heading to the end of our podcast. Just a friendly reminder, the chat is active and we do read that. So if there's any questions, feel free to post it in the chat. and we'll deal with it. And we'll chat about it for a little bit.
Perfect.
I'm just going to give everyone like a few more seconds to get that sorted. And the one thing that I kind of forgot to talk about, and both of us forgot to talk about, so last second addendum. The actual Mega Drive Mini, and the fact that M2 is actually going to be doing the emulation for that.
Mm-hmm.
Which, if you haven't watched it yet, I highly recommend everyone to give a good watch on My Life in Gaming's documentary about M2 and the extraordinary links to actually go to porting games over. So I'm really expecting a lot, and I think that's why everyone is so hyped about the Mega Drive Mini. I just hope that it doesn't turn out to be the same as the Nintendo, where there's such a limited quantity that scalpers grab it and stick it online, and no one can afford to get one, because I haven't done a pre-order yet for it. I didn't have money yet.
On the Switch, I have quite a few M2 releases, like the Sega Ages line is being done by M2, and these are just great ports. They work perfectly. Oh, and there I have to mention, in the Sega Megadrive and Genesis Classics collection, there's, of course, also Sonic included, but that one is not done by M2, the emulation. So I have it on Switch, and I also have some M2 games, and the Mega Drive and Genesis Classics on Switch, it has too much input lag. Sonic feels spongy, sadly. So that was a bit of a bummer there. So, but on PC, you at least get the uncompressed ROMs to use in any other emulator. Shall we quickly go over the different emulator options again? Because I believe we left out the Raspberry Pi and some general overview of the options that people have.
Sure. While people are posting their questions, I don't think we've actually got any questions, which is surprising. I thought that we're going to get a lot of questions, but I think we've covered our ground quite well. There's no one wants to add stuff in, and no one's shouting at us, which is a good thing. So yes, emulation options.
Well, software emulators, obviously. Downloadable for free. Software usually doesn't cost anything. You pop your legal ROMs in there and you play your games. But you have to tweak the settings quite a bit. Like, depending on the system, I own a Gamepad Digital XD, which is a Android-based clamshell handheld made for gaming. But Android has a bit of issues with the audio system. So, and you usually use, what's it called again? Can you remind me what was the emulator suite again that uses DLL plugins?
RetroArch? Or RetroArch?
Yeah,
depends on how you want to pronounce it.
Correct. That's the one you usually use, but you have to tweak quite a few settings. Like, you have to reduce the audio buffer to the absolute minimum to reduce input lag.
Yeah.
It's recommended to hard sync GPU and CPU and do all these kind of little tweaks. And RetroArch also now has a feature which is it's called Run Ahead, if I'm not mistaken. So RetroArch will literally run ahead and render what you could maybe be doing. So when you press the button to jump, for example, it would immediately execute it without any delay, but it comes as a significant performance cost, and you always lose a frame or two.
Yeah,
and you have to set it up per game.
Because they're trying to do hardware syncing, and hardware syncing and emulation is extremely tricky. You have to be cycle accurate to be able to do that sort of thing, and that's why FPGAs is much better at that than any sort of emulator ever will be.
Exactly, and that's the same problem you have on the Raspberry Pis. Everybody's over Raspberry Pis, which is like the cheapest solution that you have to pay for to have a tiny retro gaming system where you use RetroPie or Recalbox. I tried them both. If you're like me, you will spend a lot of time setting them up, scraping cover artwork to make it nice looking, and you can sink a lot of time into this without actually playing the games. But also controllers, you have to set up. If it's a controller that is not recognized by the system out of the box, you have to write tiny configuration files. So it can be a lot of work. And the Raspberry Pi is quite limited in power. I was using a Pi 3B Plus.
Yeah.
And usually it worked, but you have a noticeable input lag, even with Game Boy. I have an original Game Boy here, and if you compare, for example, Balloon Kit with the emulated version, you notice there's an input lag.
Yeah, you can't play Balloon Kit without proper inputs. That game is so unforgiving.
Yes. So it is great if you want to go low cost, but let's say if you have one system that you want to play and you want to accurately play it. I mean, let's face it, the advantage of a Raspberry Pi is it has HDMI out and USB in. So you can hook up any kind of USB controller. So, but if you have just one system that you want to play, there's the company Analog. Now we're stepping into the FPGA territory.
Yeah, and before we go to FPGAs, I just want to reiterate, it also depends on the person that wants to play the system.
Mm-hmm.
So like, for instance, your Raspberry Pi that you load up your games and everything set up there, it's great for a hobbyist and you want to like show your friends some of the old games you played, or if you have a kid and you want to have them experience some of the games, that's absolutely perfect. That's a great starting point. Mm-hmm. The same with the emulators like these. It's a great starting point. FPGA is a level up in my mind for that. That's for the professional, for the retro gamer. Mm-hmm. So the cost and stuff is a little bit more. But you can carry on and we can talk about Analog a little bit.
Mm-hmm. So Analog released their first console, which was the Analog NT, which was a basically NES clone in beautiful aluminum frame body, or for the British listeners, aluminium. And it was a bit more expensive because of the really high quality materials like a CNC'd aluminum body. So, but you stick in your original cartridges and you play them, and it works great. But these consoles have one downside, in my opinion. They have only the original gamepad connector, so you need to use original peripherals for them. Yeah. And I mean, honestly, I don't want to go hunting for an original NES controller that is worn out and overpriced. I mean, fair enough, you can get, and that's what they advertise it with, maybe even they include one, is a retro connector from 8BitDo, which is like a wireless receiver that plugs into the original game port, and then you can use a 8BitDo gamepad.
And frankly, that's what I would use. I definitely would get one of those. The new 8BitDo controllers, the Sega stuff, from what I've heard and from what I've seen from reviews, it's one-on-one to the original.
Well, the design of the 8BitDo M30, which is the Sega gamepad, basically, it's different. It's like a hybrid between the old, Batarang style 3-button Genesis gamepad and the 6-button banana-shaped gamepad. But I have two of those. They're great. I really love them. They have the rolling D-pad, which is awesome, and the 8BitDo gamepads always, well, not always, but the majority of them support multiple protocols like D input, X input, so you will get it to work. Mm-hmm. So yeah, you would use these usually with that when you don't have any original and in good shape gamepads anymore. So this is a great alternative if you want to use one system. And rumor has it that usually in some corner of the internet, usually a jailbroken firmware creeps up for these consoles that allow you to load your legally owned ROMs from an SD card. So if you bought like the Megadrive collection, you could play them on these devices probably. I don't have any analog console, but they are a good starting point into the FPGA range, because the newer ones, I think they go for about $190. Yeah. So that's reasonable.
And I think this is kind of where the thing forks now into two directions. So you've got like your entry tier, which is emulation. Then you've got your middle tier, which is dedicated FPGA hardware. And I think there's a fork around about this corner where you get people like me who just want to do like the original console, repair it, mod it so that you can play it on an LCD screen, and then use that for your games. And then you've got the other tier of people, which I think kind of you more or less fall more under, which is your FPGA flexible hardware that you can change, which you want to get into that a little bit?
Yeah, but first let me mention, I totally agree with you on getting the original console, and with the Master System, I was lucky that it has AV out, because I have a nice little 423 TFT that has such an input, and it works. And I mentioned before that the original experience of the Master System was quite terrible because the games run slower, and I fixed that. There's a way to mod the master system, but I guess we keep that for a later podcast where we could go maybe more into the details of a master system, how to mod it, and this.
We should do a podcast just dedicated on physical hardware, I think, because that's like where I come from and what you're getting into. So I think that should really be its own thing. But on the FPGA side, the next level up, you get things like the Mister, which is a flexible FPGA system where you can load multiple different cores into it, and it emulates multiple different machines. And you own a Mister, if I'm not mistaken.
That is correct. At some point, I got aware of this open source project. You see, in the beginning, now this sounds biblical. In the beginning, there was the MIST FPGA, which is a tiny metal box that was being sold with an FPGA, and it's called MIST because the two best cores, which are the configuration files for the FPGA, are the Amiga core, which is called Minimic, therefore the MI, and the Atari ST core. So you have the MI uppercase ST.
I didn't know that.
The Mister is the successor. I don't know if it has any special meaning, the ER in the end, but a Mister is always nice to have. So basically, they found that there is a affordable FPGA board on the market called the DE10 Nano by TerraSig. And they ported the MIST over to the DE10, which is now the Mister, and started writing open source cores. So it's a very lively, fast-pacing open source project where people write the individual cores. I mean, the main developer is Sorgelic. I hope I'm pronouncing his name right. Awesome guy. If you look at the updates list on atari-forum.com, they have a subsection for FPGA-based clones, and there you find the Mister, including the update thread. There's a ton of updates all the time, and here's now one big advantage. For example, if you think of the Super Nintendo, there were cartridges that incorporated a special chip called the Super FX.
Yeah.
And if you want to play these on a Raspberry Pi or in software emulation, good luck. It's very hard to emulate, and I never managed to get it stutter-free, even on an i7 system that churns out 100 watts of energy, whatever, no chance. So they recreated the Super FX chip in the Super Nintendo core, so you can actually run Star Fox, Yoshi's Island, and Star Fox. The Super FX chip in there was still a very early version that was called the Mario Chip 1.
Yeah.
And the Mario acronym is a bit forced there because this chip was made by Argonaut Software. So the acronym means Mathematical Argonaut Rotation and I/O. So, well, okay. But it was an early product, so they ran it at half speed. So, and in the Mister, you can actually say, do you want original speed or full speed, like turbo?
Yeah. So, and you need full speed probably for stuff like Skyfox. So, like, what's it called? Sequel to the not Spy Fox. But anyway, that the game that's on the SNES Mini that's exclusive.
Star Fox 2.
Star Fox, there we go. I had me Spy Fox, Sky Fox, no, Star Fox.
I bet these were awesome. This would have been awesome games.
Yeah, I think we should definitely do an episode where we like split into those sort of categories and talk about real hardware versus FPGA, and then do a discussion on that. And I think, as you can hear, I think it's about time that we need to end tonight's podcast, unfortunately. Because I don't see that there was any questions asked. Everyone seems to be happy.
Maybe we haven't been controversial or wrong enough yet.
No one has shouted at us yet, so that's a good start.
Yeah, and I mean, we have plenty of more podcasts to explain the actual difference between software emulation and FPGA emulation, because it's quite a different beast. And actually interesting to know why FPGA is such a hot thing now.
Yeah. Why everyone wants one, why everyone wants to own one. And also,
Yeah.
I'll go into why real hardware is getting so hard to maintain and run these days. It's really an
Yes.
uphill battle, especially if you
I was-
feel where I am at the moment.
Yeah, I was lucky that I got a Master System in good condition, really.
Yeah, because there's fewer and fewer of those. So yeah, that's the end of our podcast tonight, everyone. I'm going to roll the end credits. And thanks for everyone that stayed, because it looks like we had 5 viewers that watched the thing from start to finish. Thank you. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for dropping in. I mean, I guess our viewers and future viewers will have seen how exciting this was for us.
Yeah, and this is going to be a pre-recording, so if you go to my channel, you'll be able to watch this after the fact as well.
Awesome.